Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. All right, so we're going to go over a story that we talked a little bit about this morning during our update video with the Russia-Ukraine war, and it was a statement that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had made at the Munich Security Conference in Germany. So today's the second day of that conference, and while he was there, he mentioned and called for the creation of an army of Europe to counter Russia. You can see here on your screen, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Saturday that the time has come for the creation of an armed forces of Europe because the US may no longer be counted on to support the continent. Okay, I believe this is a very big story, and I wanted to dive in more deeper with this and talk more about this as we could potentially be seeing a great divide and a growing rift between European countries and also the US in terms of NATO. And I think that Europe is starting to wake up now and realize they might be on their own if they get attacked by Russia in the future. And Zelensky just made so many huge statements at this conference today. He talked about, Russia planning to station 150,000 troops inside of Belarus that could be used to attack Ukraine or maybe even European nations like the Baltic countries. So I want to show you guys a very big report talking about this and also some things that are unfolding on the back end after we're hearing about this. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on over here real quick to the BBC. And I've got a very big report here that I want to show you guys. This report has such good information based on what we're talking about here. So, Army of Europe needed to challenge Russia, says Zelensky. This is coming out today, February 15th, 2025. And it says right here Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for the creation of an army of Europe as he suggested that the U.S. may no longer come to the continent's aid. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, he said U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance had made it clear the old relationship between Europe and America was ending, and the continent needs to adjust to that. Okay, so even just this alone, huge statement, right? I mean, we've seen so many statements coming out like this from the United States that they basically in a way want nothing to do with Europe in terms of like support and military aid. We've heard so much, even Donald Trump calling for 5% defense spending within NATO that Europe has not been paying their fair share. So there's definitely a growing divide here that we're seeing with top officials from the U.S. He also said Ukraine would never accept deals made behind our backs without our involvement after Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin agreed to start peace talks. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's special envoy has said Europe will be consulted but will not take part in the talks if and when they happen. Okay, so this is the talks about trying to end this war with Russia. We know that the U.S. is going to do a lot of diplomatic talks with Russia themselves, but it seems like in many ways, a lot of times, Ukraine's not going to be involved in some of these talks, and Europe, for sure, from what we heard from Keith Kellogg, he came out today at the conference and said that Europe would not be involved in the talks. And we had Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky coming out and saying just recently, as of yesterday, that he wanted European allies to be involved as they've been helping so much out with this war, okay? So it says here, in remarks likely to raise concern in Ukraine and among European allies, Keith Kellogg said previous negotiations had failed because too many parties had been involved. It may be like chalk on the blackboard. It may grate a little bit, but I'm telling you something that is really quite honest, he said on Saturday. Zelensky also said that he had blocked a Trump-led deal that would have given the U.S. access to vast amounts of Ukrainian natural resources because it lacks security guarantees for Kyiv and does not protect us. Okay, that's a big one too. We talked about that this morning. That Zelensky, for right now at least, does not want to do any trade with the U.S. and transport, weapons from the U.S. to Ukraine in return for Ukrainian minerals. Okay, so who knows? Is Ukraine going to try to do some deal with Europe now, and they're going to say forget the U.S.? It looks like that could be the case. We'll have to see what happens here. Trump has pushed for access to rare minerals in Ukraine in return for aid or even as compensation for the support the U.S. has already provided. Earlier this week, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine was a factory reset for NATO, which signaled the alliance needed to be robust, strong, and real. On Saturday, Zelensky said, let's be honest, now we can't rule out the possibility that America might say no to Europe on an issue that threatens it. Many leaders have talked about Europe that it needs its own military, an army of Europe. The concept of European army has been proposed by other leaders, including France's Emmanuel Macron, who has long backed the bloc's own military to reduce its reliance on the U.S. So the idea was quickly rebuffed by the EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas. Zelensky said a few days ago, President Trump told me about his conversation with Putin. Not once did he mention that America needs Europe at the table. That says a lot, okay? That's a huge statement that came out today from Zelensky also. And we know that most likely Europe is not going to be at the negotiating table with Ukraine as they go into these talks with Russia. The old days are over when America supported Europe just because it always had. As Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine nears its 3-year anniversary, Trump and Hegseth have both said that it is unlikely that Ukraine will join NATO. The U.S. Defense Secretary also said a return to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders was unrealistic. Zelensky said he would not take NATO membership off for Ukraine off the table. Okay, so just huge statements coming out today, and I want to show you guys this report because it had so much information coming out from this conference that even some things I was not able to show you this morning with our update video for the Russia-Ukraine war. All right, so now we're going to jump on over to X, and I've got a few things I can share with you guys over here also from independent sources. So this is the clip of Zelensky today talking about the armed forces of Europe that must be created. This was his statement from Anton Gerashenko here. I really believe that the time has come that armed forces of Europe must be created, President Zelensky at the Munich Security Conference. Okay, so just a quick 30-second clip, and it will have subtitles here, but he's going to speak in English. Take a look at this.
Let's be honest, now we can't rule out the possibility that America might say no to Europe on issues that threaten it. Many leaders have talked about Europe that needs its own military, an army of Europe. And I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created.
Okay, guys, I mean, huge statement from Zelensky today, and that's why I wanted to talk so much about this. And the fact that, you know, that they might create this armed forces of Europe. This could be completely separate from NATO's, what it appears to me. And could we potentially even see European nations now start to deploy their troops into Ukraine? Is this war going to continue? So much could really happen here, but it's definitely going to get crazy here in the next few months. And we'll see how these talks go, if they're actually going to even work out. Now from Mario, things just got real. Macron just called an emergency summit in Paris. And Poland's foreign minister, Sikorski, is making it clear Europe is done waiting for the U.S. to get its S together. Sorry, guys, there is a little bit of profanity here in this statement. This isn't just a meeting. This is massive geopolitical shift happening in real time. Europe sees what's happening. Trump is actively sabotaging NATO, playing footsies with Putin, and screwing Ukraine over. Now Poland, France, and the rest of the EU are stepping the F up. What's on the table? Ukraine's survival, more weapons, more direct support, European defense without the U.S. because, let's face it, America under Trump is unreliable as F. Kicking reliance on Washington security guarantees to the curb, Europe's getting ready to hold its own. Sikorski basically just said Europe needs to be strong and united or will get steamrolled by Moscow. Zelensky is calling for an army of Europe while Russia's massing 150,000 troops in Belarus. Let that sink in. We are watching history be rewritten right now. If Europe makes a serious move to build its own military power, NATO as we know it could be done. The world is shifting fast. All right, so this is a picture here of Radoslaw Sikorski, Poland's foreign minister. And yeah, these were some statements coming out from him today. And as far as I know Poland and France are going to be attending an emergency meeting next week. We might see some other countries inside of Europe also attending that meeting. And again, I think Europe is realizing that they're on their own here. And, let's say Russia attacks Europe later on down the road. Will the U.S. come to their aid, even though they're a NATO member? It's looking likely that maybe they might not, based on some of the statements that are coming out. And I think Europe is realizing that. And they're realizing they need to have their own army inside of Europe to protect themselves. But it makes me wonder if maybe that some of this might have to do with Ukraine right now, too. Is there a possibility that European nations can now start deploying their own troops into Ukraine? Is this war going to continue? Is it going to expand? I mean, we've already seen North Korean soldiers getting involved inside of the Kursk region of Russia, maybe even inside of eastern Ukraine. So it's such a crazy situation that is unfolding right now. So also from Igor Sushko, prediction for 2025, Russia's war on Europe will continue. European militaries will be deployed to defend Ukraine, might be Air Force only, could be ground troops as well. Okay, so these are just predictions from Igor Sushko. We've shown many of his posts in the past, and he's citing this report right here. Macron calls emergency European summit on Trump, Polish minister says. Okay, so we really don't know what's going to come from this European emergency European summit on Monday, but we know that France and Poland are going to be involved in that. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen on Monday and what's going to be announced from this. Are we going to start to hear about this army of Europe starting to be developed? Or is France and Poland, who both before have already come to say that they would be there to back Ukraine, send their troops even, especially France has come out many times doing that. So I have a feeling we're going to hear some very big news next week, and something's going to go down here, and we're going to see Europe get more heavily involved in what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. I could be completely wrong about that, but it definitely seems like it's going that way. But we'll have to wait for official confirmation coming as soon as next week, as we find out what happens here, because also we know that in Saudi Arabia, we're supposed to have Trump's team and also Vladimir Putin supposed to be meeting in inside of Saudi Arabia for talks on trying to end this war, and they're hoping they can get a deal done hopefully in the next month or so. So it's just going to be a crazy situation what's going to unfold here, and just be ready, strap yourselves in, and something big is going to be coming here very soon, as we're seeing this great divide inside of NATO right now, and Europe starting to realize and wake up that they might be on their own and they got to step up against Russian threats. So let me know what you guys think down below. Crazy story today. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.